Hi everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and class is very much in session. We're just hurtling along the road to WrestleMania right now. It's Fastlane this Sunday, and there's only one way to find out how good last night's go-home Monday Night Raw was. That's right, it's time for Graded. Man, lots of stuff happened on this show, from the whole, will the Shield reunite, will they not? What's Triple H going to say about Batista? What's going to happen with the Raw Women's title scene with Becky and Ronda and Charlotte and that sort of thing? But the most confusing thing for me out of everything was this whole backstage thing about the Saturday Night Live people. What did they bring? What were they doing? What was the bit with EC3 in the mirror? What was all of that? I'm not going to give those segments a grade, because if I did, I think we'd be here all day and I wouldn't know what to give it. I'd end up just having little squiggles pop up rather than actual letters. It was so odd. Is it an American thing? Am I not getting it because of my British humour? The thing is, I don't actually think it is that. I think it was just strange. Let's get on with the bloody wrestling. So we get Roman Reigns to open the show. Big, nice, positive reception for Roman, which is always great to see. He gets in the ring. Rollins comes out. Reigns is like, oh, you know, I want the Universal title, but my brother's in the way. Rollins is like, your comeback was inspiring, and I'm going to use that inspiration to go on to WrestleMania and defeat Brock Lesnar. Solid opening to Monday Night Raw straight away off the bat. I'm enjoying the logic on display. But Reigns is like, hold on for 1 second there, please, Seth, mate, because I want to get the band back together one last time, and I want Dean Ambrose to reform the Shield with us. Those weren't the exact words he said, I'm paraphrasing slightly. But then Rollins is like, no, not for what Ambrose did in the past. His actions have been too severe. We can't let him back into the fold. We can't forgive him. And Reigns is like, come on. And Rollins is like, fine, Roman, you know best, you are the big dog. Then Ambrose's music hits. Rollins is like, fair play, he did come out. You can tell by his expression he wasn't expecting it, but Ambrose comes out. He's got a microphone. He's about to say something. That's the sound of Elias's guitar hitting Dean Ambrose's back, apparently. One more time for those who didn't hear. So yeah, Elias ruined a potential Shield reunion, and I'm going to give this opening segment a B. It was pretty solid. Reigns and Rollins did well on the mic. I like how they didn't have Ambrose give an answer straight away at the top of the show. They kept us in suspense for a little bit later on. And I guess Elias was an alright candidate to ruin it, because he's been feuding sort of with Ambrose over the past couple of weeks. But at the same time, he did feel a little bit out of place. He did feel a little bit shoehorned in. So it only gets a B, but it was still pretty solid. Next up, we had Bálor, Strowman, and Curt Angle against Heel Team 6. Who were Heel Team 6? That's right, the team of Drew McIntyre, Baron Corbin, and Bobby Lashley, featuring Lio Rush. To be fair, right, this match wasn't quite as bad as I expected it to be, given the fact that we've seen these heels for what feels like years now, and it hasn't been at all, but for what feels like a very long time, just running roughshod over Raw, doing the same style of beatdowns to the same collection of faces for the past forever. But this match actually had a good degree of intensity and strategy in points as well. It all culminated when Strowman did his whole running around the ring thing. Oh, by the way, what was Michael Cole on about when Strowman ran around the ring and Michael Cole went, Strowman says hashtag get off the tracks when the monster truck comes through, monster train comes through. Hashtag get off the tracks when the monster train comes through, or the monster train's coming through, or something like that. I went on Strowman's Twitter to see if he had been hashtagging that, and he had, but only twice, and it feels very forced. I wonder if he's been forced to do it. Hashtag get off the tracks when the monster train comes through. All the kids are going to be saying it this summer. Catchy as hell. But yes, it all culminated when Strowman smashed Lio Rush through the barricade. He was aiming for Lashley, but Lashley moved and Lio took the full force of it, taking both Lio and Strowman out of contention. This allowed the heels to gang up on the babyfaces, and Bobby Lashley pinned Finn Bálor with the spear to pick up the victory for the heel team 6. This gets, B-. It was alright. The match was exciting in points. There were down periods as well, but I think generally the match was actually pretty surprisingly exciting. It got the crowd invested despite us seeing this feud drag on in various permutations for what feels like forever. It was actually alright for what it was. One thing I will say though is that there seems to be quite a trend recently of champions taking pinfalls in non-title matches. We've seen it happen to Daniel Bryan quite often. We've seen it happen to the Revival quite often recently too. We've now seen it happen to Finn Bálor, and we will see it happen to one more champion later on tonight. So some writer somewhere in the back has got a bit of a fetish for that, and I'm not quite certain about it. But apart from that, this match was honestly quite good. It was the match of the night, which says something at least. Next up, Natalya versus Ruby Riot. Let me tell you exactly what went down. Natalya and Ruby Riot wrestled slowly for about 2 minutes. Natalya tried to get the sharpshooter, didn't work. Ruby Riot tried for some moves, didn't work. Natalya rolled up Ruby Riot and pinned her for 3, and yep, that was... This gets an E. What? No one looked good here. Natalya looked lucky. Ruby Riot was in a title match just like a couple of weeks ago, and now she's being beaten in 2 minutes by Natalya on Raw. What's going on there? The Riot squad on the outside don't look good because they were too slow to like help out their leader. And finally, Lacey Evans came out just to put that cherry on top of the segment. Came out, did her thing, unconditional, and then turned around and left again. And I'm getting sick of it. I'm getting a little bit sick of it. Can she do something, please? This segment gets an E. It was just so frustrating. Next up, Triple H is coming out to break kayfabe. Yo, if you believe that wrestling is real, then you're about to have your reality shattered by the cerebral assassin, The Game. Now, in fairness, he did sort of skirt the line of breaking kayfabe, but everything he said kind of can be interpreted in a way that doesn't break the fourth wall entirely. We'll see. He comes out and says, right, you know, I need to address Batista's attack on Ric Flair last week. I could talk about Ric Flair and sing his praises for an hour, and I was like, oh god, but he didn't. It's okay, he didn't. Triple H says he's not here to talk about Ric Flair though, he's here to talk about Richard Flair, and I was like, oh, it's time to shoot, we're using real names, Paul, is that what's going on? He says, yes, himself and Flair have been there throughout the highs and the lows of each other's lives, for each other. He even mentions the tragic death of Ric Flair's son, like a real event, which made it quite intense. He also talks then about how he's really angry at Batista, who he calls Dave quite a lot. He mentions how Batista didn't show up, which we saw in a video just before this segment, and basically rips Dave a new one. At one point he says, you know what, when you've got the balls to come and face me, then we'll have a fight. It doesn't need to be in the ring. I could invite you to my house, I could come over to your house. And I was sat there like, oh, this sounds lovely. What a nice pair of friends. But Triple H basically says, yeah, I'll fight you on a movie set or whatever. And more intensely than I've just done there, he's like kind of staring into the camera because he is The Game. And then he says that once Batista's found a set of balls, you know, he can look him in the eyes and see not Triple H the character, and he mentioned characters a lot, and I was like, don't do it. Don't do it. Like, it kind of risks devaluing the rest of the show. And I get that he might mean the pageantry and the showmanship rather than the fact that it's not a real contest, but it still was skirting the line a little bit closely for my liking. But he said, you know, you'll not be looking at Triple H the character, you'll be looking at the man. And I was like, oh, Becky Lynch. I'm going to give this promo a B, right? I've seen it get a very positive or a very negative response online. People either loved this or hated it. I can see arguments for both. On the one hand, I found myself cringing a little bit sometimes because I think the crowd are quieter than Triple H may have expected, so it did come across as a bit awkward at points, but his intensity was off the charts. If anyone can build an intense feud for WrestleMania, it's Triple H. Even if the actual results at the match itself at WrestleMania sometimes do vary, but the build-up is always intense with Triple H. It's just a given. I can see why some people weren't particularly a fan of the whole this is real, this isn't the character of Triple H, it's talking about Richard Flair and all that. I can see why some people didn't like that, because it does come dangerously close to devaluing the rest of the show and saying this is real, the rest of it's not real, this feud's the real one. But at the same time, I don't think it was too overt. I think in fact it gave it more of a vibe like, you know what, my wrestling persona, this is more of a street fight. I'm just Paul Levesque, I'm gonna beat you up, Dave, and all this sort of stuff. So I think it just gave it a rougher edge rather than saying, you know, the rest of the show's fake. I don't think it quite did that. Next up, we have a tag team gauntlet match or series of matches, which is weirdly set up because instead of teams coming down the ramp one by one, like in a rumble or gauntlet, they're all around the ring like a lumberjack match, which really telegraphed who the winners were going to be when you see the backstory to this one. So this match was set up because we got a shot of the locker room backstage where several tag teams were making fun of Heavy Machinery, specifically Otis Dozovich. Victor from the Ascension seemed to be the leader in all of this, going, hey, he's a dumb bell and that sort of thing. The other tag teams there were the B team, who I believe are babyfaces, and Curt Hawkins and Zack Ryder, who are definitely babyfaces, so I don't quite understand what that was about. So basically in about sort of 4 or 5 minutes, Heavy Machinery just run through each one of their opponents in quite short order. The team that got closest to beating them were probably Hawkins and Ryder to play off the whole losing streak storyline, but it didn't come to an end. They did lose, and Heavy Machinery picked up the win, and Otis did the caterpillar, and everyone loved it. Especially Renee. She loves Heavy Machinery for some reason. Well, we've all got our favourites. I'm going to have to give this a D-, unfortunately. First of all, I don't understand why 2 babyface teams were being mean to another one of the baby. They were looking like real bullies backstage. It was quite strange. But apart from that, more importantly, I think, than strange character development, I think that the main downfall of this was that the crowd were just not invested at all. They didn't enjoy the story. They were near silent for the majority of the match. and it was just a bit of a shame, really. I haven't given it an E, though. It wasn't like, or an F even, it wasn't like too bottom of the barrel, just because at least WWE are showing a commitment to really getting over a new call-up tag team from NXT. So at least there's that, but the way they're going about it is all wrong for me. Next up, we have Dean Ambrose versus Elias. Beforehand, at sort of 2 different points during the show backstage, both Reigns and Rollins tried to talk to Ambrose backstage and convince him to, you know, rejoin the club, be with his Shield brothers again, and Ambrose was like, I don't know what that noise was. So he comes out for this match with Elias, not looking too good because obviously he got hit in the back with the guitar at the top of the show. Does a quite good job of selling that at points, actually. And in fact, it's implied that it's cost him the win here because he climbs up to the top rope to hit the elbow onto Elias, but he can't get up fast enough because his back really hurts. Then, as he jumps down because he's taken too long, Elias has recovered and, you know, knocks him up into the chin with a knee. Knocks him up into the chin with a knee. I'm like bloody Joe Rogan. I'm a proper fight commentator, I know all the terminology. He hits him with a drift away, wins 1, 2, 3. Strong win for Elias, to be fair, and another bad loss for Dean Ambrose, but the segment wasn't over yet. So the Shield boys come out, Rollins and Reigns, and they get in the ring, and Ambrose is really disappointed, and they're like, you know what, you've got one last chance. This is your chance, man. Rejoin the Shield right now, let's do it. And Ambrose is like, no, can't do it. And he's in a bad mood because he lost as well. I totally get it. I just want to be on my own. He walks out the ring, heads halfway up the crowd, up the steps, and then out of the entrance come heel team 6. Yeah, it's Corbin, Lashley, and McIntyre. McIntyre's having a good time on the mic, isn't he? He's like, we were gonna challenge you to an epic match at Fastlane, but instead, you know, we're gonna just batter yous now, right now. Bang, microphone down. I was like, Jesus Christ. They all get in the ring, start beating up the Shield, and Ambrose is on the steps, halfway up the crowd, like, am I going to do it? And he does. You know, he runs back down. Nimble little hop over the barrier, which I really enjoyed. Gets in the ring, evens the odds. They throw the heels out, and then they basically... This was unintentionally funny, I think. Rollins and Reigns stand facing away from Ambrose towards the hard cam, of course, because they're professionals. And they do that, and they wait in, and Rollins is like, without looking, though, to be like, Dean, you still there, mate? They go like, come on, come on. And then Dean, right, runs up behind them and goes, yeah, and they all go, yeah. It was quite funny, but in a strange, like in a really strange way. I'm gonna give this, I think I'm probably gonna give it a B-. The match was alright between Dean and Elias. I don't think it was maybe quite as effective a reunion as WWE wanted it to be, but at the same time, it was still kind of effective. It's a Shield reunion. It's never not gonna pop the crowd. The thing was really funny at the end. Sets up the match for Fastlane, like a multi-man tag team sort of match. And also at the same time, I just think that this was held back from getting higher grade because there's a little bit of diminishing returns, you know? Every time the Shield have reformed, I feel like it's got a little bit less exciting each time. But I don't blame them for doing it, especially if it's true that Ambrose is off soon. I think that it's probably the right time. And even though they've kind of shoehorned it into current storylines, when else were they going to do another Shield reunion? So can't blame them for this one. Next up, Sasha Banks, one half of the women's tag team champions, taking on Tamina, Bayley and Nia Jax in their respective corners, of course. This was very, very weird. The execution of the match was fine. Actually, for a Tamina match, it was probably one of her better outings, but for a Sasha match, it wasn't particularly. But the main problem here is that it was booked really badly. Nia got involved twice. She dragged Tamina out of the ring when she was caught in the bank statement, and she distracted Sasha at one point, and then she took a super kick and lost clean in about 2 or 3 minutes to Tamina. I mean, that's Sasha Banks. Not only is she one half of your current women's tag team champions, but also at the same time, she's Sasha Banks, you know, she shouldn't be getting put away so easily like this. She's always a contender at the top of the card. She had a match against Ronda Rousey at the Royal Rumble, which was only like less than 2 months ago. So yeah, I'm going to give this a D. You know, the action was inoffensive, but Sasha should not be getting pinned by Tamina in like 3 minutes. Come on, we all know this. Next up, it's a title match between the Revival and the new NXT call-up team of Ricochet and Aleister Black. This is pretty much the same old story as usual. Like, the action's good because all 4 of them are fantastic wrestlers, but the storytelling's a bit strange. There is actually a story beginning to develop here, but unfortunately it's the story that the Revival can't pin anyone. They can't buy a pinfall victory. They do win, however. They win via DQ because at one point Ricochet and Black have knocked them both to the outside, and Rude and Gable are there, and they just attack the Revival, so the Revival pick up the win by DQ. Obviously, the babyfaces in the ring are really annoyed because that was their title shot, so then they brawl with Rude and Gable for a little bit, throw them out the ring, and then do like their whole sit down flippy spot thing. So you've got Ricochet and Black in the ring looking all cool and badass. You've got Gable and Rude on the outside looking annoyed and like ready to fight. And you've got the, I don't know where the Revival even went. I mean, they won by DQ, but they still look weak, don't they? No, you know what? I feel like I've been a little bit too harsh with this segment. I'm going to give it a C because at least it's potentially setting up a wicked match on pay-per-view. Like, imagine if it's given time and we get Ricochet and Black versus Rude and Gable versus the Revival. That match has the potential to be so good that I would forgive so much botched storytelling in the build-up to it. I think it may actually be worth it in the long run if we do get that match and if it's given time, like at least 15 minutes. And now it's time for the weird closing segment of the show. Lots to unpack here. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. Earlier in the night, though, it's important to mention that Stephanie had booked Charlotte versus Becky for Fastlane for the vacant Raw Women's Championship, which Ronda had vacated last week when she just left it in the ring and went home. Yeah, so we get Charlotte versus Becky at Fastlane, which is still happening, but after this segment, you're going to see why it's not for the title anymore. This is a contract sign-in. You know, Charlotte and Becky have a tense standoff. They're all being smug and confident towards each other. They both signed the contract. Stephanie's there too with the belt on her shoulder, which is just genius. And then, out of nowhere, Ronda comes back, striding through the backstage area, all the way down to the ring, grabs the mic. What's this about? So Ronda comes back and demands the Raw Women's Championship back and gets it. Steph gives it to her. So it's like, why did you vacate it in the first place? Does it count as a vacating of the belt, or is it still a continuation of her original reign? Can't quite work out what's going on here. So Stephanie goes, all right, Becky versus Charlotte is still on for Fastlane, but if Becky wins, because it's non-title now, if Becky wins, she gets put in the main event of WrestleMania, and we get the triple threat that we knew was coming for so long. This segment up until this point was really a bit of a drag. I was kind of struggling through it. But then Ronda got the mic and cut one of her better promos, actually. Basically, Ronda finally turns heel. She's sick of the crowd giving her negative reactions, and it's shades of Bret Hart if Bret Hart talked a million times faster. She goes, you know, I'm not your performing monkey. You know that I could beat these both up if I sneezed in their direction, but you still give me loads of crap and all this sort of stuff. She says that Stephanie can't control her. She's a wild card. She can just go rogue at any point and Stephanie can't do anything about it, which is really, I like that as well. And then at the end of her promo, just booted Charlotte out of the ring and battered Becky Lynch, while Charlotte wisely just watched on from the outside because they've got that match on Sunday. That all made total sense. The segment really improved in its latter half. But it was a weird ending to Raw, lots of positives and negatives in that final segment, because I just get the feeling week on week like they've overcomplicated this storyline. It doesn't need to be this complicated. Ronda didn't need to drop and then win back the belt or whatever. I feel like it's being rewritten week on week, and it's not quite as clean as it should have been. For such a big, intense Mania feud, this should have really been planned, I think, more clearly in advance. I'm going to give it a C- as well rather than a C, just because the ending of Raw is Stephanie backstage being interviewed going, you know what, Ronda thinks that I can't control her? Well, we'll see about that because I can. Which is like, well, just take the sting out of what she said immediately then, Steph, come on. It wasn't the biggest thing in the world, but it just ended it on a sour note for me. So it's time for my overall grade. I'm going to give this week's Raw a D+, which sounds harsh, but there was a lot wrong. There was nothing excellent, and even the things that were good had some flaws here and there, like Triple H flirting with the idea of breaking kayfabe, for example, or the diminishing returns of the Shield reunion. And then the bad stuff on the show was bad, like Sasha losing to Tamina in about 2 minutes, the whole Natalya and Ruby Riot match, which is still a mystery to me. The ending segment was saved when Ronda turned heel, but the storyline itself, the wider overarching storyline, is just a mess by this point. All they needed to do was have Becky win the Rumble, which they did, and then have Charlotte force her way into the match because she was eliminated by Becky, who was never an official entrant in the Rumble. That's all they needed to do. It's quite simple. It's quite simple. Instead, it's too long to recap. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter @Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.